Joining us now are Ed Rollins, the Republican analyst and former campaign manager to Michelle Bachmann, and from our Washington bureau, Amy Holmes, anchor of The Blaze on Glenn Beck TV. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. How are you?
Let's start with you.
Sure.
Talk about the significance of this straw poll in Florida today and the importance of Florida in general. I mean, I think everyone knows that Florida is an important state, but you've said if a Republican doesn't win Florida, they can't win the election.
Florida is the key. Obviously, California and New York are two of the biggest states that are Democratic, and Texas is ours, and we need Florida. Sort of balance that off so that you go battle in the Midwest and elsewhere. Our convention is in Florida. We have to do well in Florida.
Who's going to win the straw poll today?
It should be Perry. You know, the bottom line is that Ron Paul always does well in these straw polls, so I would not be shocked if that occurs. But this is kind of a test of Perry's organizational skills.
Amy, I want to put up a couple of new polls that came out this week and get your reaction. The first one is a Suffolk University poll from New Hampshire. Mitt Romney garnering 41% of likely Republican voters, followed by Ron Paul, John Huntsman, Rick Perry only getting 8% in that poll. But then you look at a Quinnipiac poll from Florida, it's completely reversed. Rick Perry gets 28% of the vote, Mitt Romney 22% of the vote. Now, I know that Mitt Romney has a big hometown advantage in New Hampshire. He comes from right next door. But how do you explain this huge difference between these two states?
Well, a big difference for Mitt Romney is that he's done a lot of work in New Hampshire since 2008, where back then, of course, he wasn't nearly as popular. He didn't win New Hampshire, and so he's poured a lot of his time and his energy in getting that granite state, you know, the folks who want to be able to shake the candidate's hand and meet with him personally before they make that judgment. And, of course, Rick Perry only just jumped into the race, so he hasn't made that same investment. Down in Florida, that's a very interesting question in terms of Republican primary voters versus the entire state of Florida, which you were speaking about earlier with Ed Rollins, that for Florida, Rick Perry is making the case that he can do very well with Hispanic, Latino voters in Florida. But on the other side, Mitt Romney, he's making the case that he has more of that broad, widespread appeal, and perhaps he could get some of those non-conventional, independent, conservative Democrats in a general election.
I want to get both of your thoughts on where this race stands after this third debate in Florida on Wednesday night. We learned about Rick Perry, that he seems to have some trouble formulating his answers, especially on foreign policy. We also learned that Mitt Romney has a new strategy, and that is to make it look like Rick Perry doesn't know what he's talking about. But you got to be careful with that.
Mitt Romney has become a better candidate because of Rick Perry getting in the race. And obviously, he's got a very competitive race now with someone who can raise the resources and compete everywhere. None of this matters. The debates don't matter. The straw polls doesn't matter until voters start casting their votes. And obviously, what you have to do is you have to win Iowa, you have to win New Hampshire, you have to win South Carolina. If you don't win one of those three states or two out of those three states in order to go on, Florida's not going to matter because you're not going to be competitive in Florida.
Amy, very quickly, do you think that we are going to have a government shutdown in Washington next week?
I doubt that. I'm very skeptical that it'll come to that, in part because really the arguments about why the government would be shutting down are not very good. That we're shutting down the government because we couldn't make offsetting cuts to this spending, and instead we wanted to spend on green energy programs that right now are in the crosshairs, particularly Solyndra, as your reporter reported. So I don't see it coming to that. We've been here before, this brinkmanship, and a lot of it is the parties playing to their bases and trying to, you know, bring that together, and then at the end coming to a compromise.
Right. Well, let's hope for the economy's sake you're right. Ed Rollins,
Great. Nice to meet you.
Amy Holmes, thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you.